going to move the mic out of the way as well, because I think I've always been told that I'm loud, so I'll exercise that voice that I have. Can everybody hear me well? Yeah. Of course, I mean, it's hard to go as a speaker after Carol, and I was thinking as I was listening to her that, certainly she could have made another run for it this time, and her eloquence, her commitment is certainly not new, and she keeps demonstrating it despite the fact that she's not a member of the rank and file as she was when she ran last time. Look, folks, Carol's campaign is an inspiration for me. Certainly her leadership in 2005 to take on the Old Boys Network, and let's be clear about it, within the labor movement is an inspiration and continues to be an inspiration. For a number of reasons that did not happen then, although the 37% is very significant to understand in the context of 2005. I may need some water, by the way, if somebody can. It's very important to recognize that, and it's very important to build on it. So it's unfortunate that nobody attempted to do so over the past 9 years. There was an absolute need for it, and there is an absolute need for it right now. Not to just run for an office at the CLC, but to present, as Carol said, a positive, progressive alternative. And I, myself, I'm not running against Giorgetti the individual. I'm running against the vision that Giorgetti represents. And that vision has not served us for the past 15 years. Comrade Herman said in his introduction about the defeats and the setbacks and the concessions and the two-tier concessions that we're accepting right across the country. And those are continuing and are only going to get worse. Yet, when we listen to the rhetoric coming from the powers that be right now at the Canadian Labour Congress, we see that they are planning to continue the course. Brother Giorgetti has a job to finish, he said in his video message to the rank and file. And what is the job that he wants to finish? We are heading fast forward all the way down towards a cliff, folks. And if we do not wake up, that's where he's going to take us. And I don't mince my words. This is a leadership that we've had enough on. We need to reject. We need to reject as a rank and file. We need to reject as communities. We need to reject as grassroots, not only within the labor movement, but also outside the labor movement. Because there's a huge role for the labor movement to play in leading and working with communities to confront not Harper alone. And we all want to see Harper go. But it's about the neoliberal capitalist agenda that has put a target on the back of every single one of us. Every single one who stands in the way of corporate profits has a target on their back. But the labor movement, of course, plays an important role in this equation, in the equation of fighting the austerity agenda. The CLC itself plays an important role in that, and that's why we want to take it back. By the way, the slogan, "Take It Back," did not come from a small committee meeting. It certainly did not come from the pollsters that I have hired. It did not come from the focus groups that the CLC loves to do, more than talking to working people. It came from my conversations with workers, as you know, and I should have probably introduced myself a little bit more at the beginning, and I could do that right now. I'm privileged, of course, to be a member of 2 unions, and I'll tell you how that happens. But as a full-time job, I'm a full-time national negotiator for the Public Service Alliance of Canada. And that, of course, makes me a member of Unifor Local 2025. But I also still teach part-time at Carleton University, and that makes me a member of QP 4600. And I'm proud of both my membership in these 2 unions, and in particular in these 2 locals. Thank you, Comrade Brown. So before I started traveling the country to talk about the campaign itself, I traveled the country in my job as a national negotiator for the PSAC. And I was having a conversation, I think it was right before the last political action conference that the CLC held. I think it was about a year and a half ago. And I was trying to convince some members that they need to go. They need to go to the conference, they need to get engaged, the CLC is important. And they couldn't understand why, because they have been so disconnected from the CLC and the work that the CLC does. And when I tried to explain to them the role that the CLC could play, and has played historically, one of them piped up and said, well, if it's only a question of leadership, why don't we take it back? And that's exactly where the campaign slogan came, let's take it back. For me to run actually started probably a few years back, and there are a couple of examples why I put my name forward and what was the political impetus for that. There are of course a number of reasons, but and the spark perhaps is the one that when I heard that Giorgetti is running again and nobody's challenging him, that was, of course the spark for me to start to talk to people about putting my name forward. And as I said earlier, there's a necessity for change. And I tell you why. The CLC has a role to play, as I said earlier, has an important role to play, and it has played it in the past. But it has been disconnected rather, and irrelevant to working people. I was 3 days ago in Vancouver, and I'm not sure how many of you know that the IKEA workers in Richmond, BC, have been locked out for over a year. How many of you know that? Just by raise your hands. Not even half of the room know that. They've been locked out for about a year. I was on the picket line. The location where IKEA is perhaps about 15 or 20 minutes drive from Brother Giorgetti's house. And I went on the line, I was there for about half a day, and I spoke to a number of the workers who are locked out. And I asked them if they know what the CLC stood for. They had no clue. Only 2 of them knew out of maybe 30 people I spoke to. I asked if they know what the Canadian Labour Congress is. Only these 2 knew. And when I asked if they know who Ken Giorgetti was, only these 2 people knew who Ken Giorgetti was. What does that tell you? I mean, the CLC, one of its main purposes is to work with the affiliates to support workers who are in struggle, who are locked out or on strike. But in this particular case, they had no idea that there's even an organization called the Canadian Labour Congress. And isn't that a shame? And this is one of the stories. So we're running a campaign. We've made it from the beginning clear that this is a campaign about the grassroots. This is a campaign that will go to all, and I've spoken to a number of affiliate leaders. We will go to all the affiliate leaders and ask for their support. But we're not about to ask for anybody's permission to run a democratic campaign, to exercise our right under the CLC Constitution, to run a campaign about a vision about where we need to go in this movement. But you know what? They wanted us to. And there's one particular leader of a big affiliate who a couple of days ago was saying that Hassan Husseini is not an option as far as the candidacy is concerned because he did not talk to me. What he was saying essentially that he did not ask for my permission. And shame. Shame on him and shame on other leaders who want to reduce the movement again to the machinations of the old boys network. We're not going to allow them to do that, and I think already my campaign has changed that equation on them, has flipped the table on them, and we're going to continue. And I said earlier, we are going ahead and going against an old boys network. And I do mean it. It is an old boys network. As Sister Wall said, that another labor leader told her that we didn't choose you. It's an old boys network that has marginalized not only the membership, but has defunded. They've actually engaged over the past 15 years in a similar austerity agenda when it comes to our partners in the social movement as Harper has done. They've defunded the Canadian Health Coalition, the Ontario Health Coalition, the Ontario Coalition for Social Justice that used to be housed at the CLC building, right? And other organizations that we worked with. And of course, I remember when the CLC used to work with organizations at the national level, such as the National Action Committee on the Status of Women. They've also stopped funding that organization, and others as well. Internally, the CLC itself has gone through a little bit of structuring, or restructuring rather. And there are what we know now equity vice presidents who come from or to represent the different equity positions, Aboriginal women, workers of color, people with disability, or different abilities, of course, and LGBT community. All of these, they're equity seats for them, and of course, youth and others. But I can tell you from having conversations and discussing with these equity vice presidents is that they are even more marginalized now being on the inside than they were when they were on the outside. And isn't that a shame as well? This is the vision that we're trying to confront right now and present a different alternative to with the campaign to take back the CLC that I'm running. Our vision is a positive vision. It is not a vision that's only going on the attack against individuals at the CLC. And it rests on three main planks, three main pillars, if you want. Number one is premised on taking back the CLC and making it work for workers. Those workers that are locked out at IKEA. The workers that are fighting right now the loss of jobs at Canada Post. And the workers who are fighting against the two-tier systems and pensions at Valley Inco and other places. Those are the workers that we need to listen to. These are the workers that we need to work the CLC work for them. But also I can tell you, and maybe some of you have done some work, of course, in Toronto and other places, with labor councils. Labor councils have been marginalized by the current leadership. As far as I'm concerned, labor councils are the main bodies within our movement that bring all the affiliates together and can do the needed work on the ground to build the movement against neoliberalism and the austerity agenda. Because they're closer to the communities, they can work with the social movements and with community allies, and they can put forward positive change at the local level. And I can tell you, some labor councils have been shut down because they do not fit the business plan of the current leadership at the CLC. And some have been prevented from being established because they do not fit that business plan. This is the kind of leadership that we're facing right now. There's been a disconnect as well from the federations of labor. They talk about unity, but we all know that there is a state of war and has been between the current leadership at the CLC and the federations of labor. And that needs to end. We talk about unity, but we don't practice it. We sing solidarity forever, but we don't actually put it in practice. And we're done with that. And change is coming on that level. Also, there's a culture that needs to change at the CLC itself. I'm not sure how many of you know that Brother Jujedi actually talks about himself as the CEO of the Canadian Labour Congress. And I'm not making that shit up, by the way. Like, that's exactly what he says. That's why in my material I talk about I'm not interested in being the CEO of the CLC or of the labor movement. What I'm interested in building a real movement and working with everybody where leadership becomes at every place where we actually work, in our communities, in labor councils, federations of labor, in locals at all levels. And that culture needs to change. The second plank of the campaign that we have is around the program for labor, the political program for labor, which I must say, yes, you spoke about the number of resolutions and positions we have. How many of us know about these resolutions? How many of us know about these programmatic, perhaps, positions that we've taken in the past? Because we don't act on them. Certainly we don't educate our members on them. We don't engage our members on the basis of these changes. But we need to articulate and re-stress some of the political positions and the political platform that we need to engage all political parties on, and we need to engage communities on, and we need to build the broadest possible alliance on the basis of a political program. Fairness is good. That's why we say we need to go beyond fairness. How many of you have seen the Fairness Works campaign? Those popsicle ads and so on. They're good, and I'm not necessarily opposed to them. But to the tune of over $22 million that they want to carry on the campaign, I think that's putting too many eggs in one basket that has not in the past paid off, and it's not going to. And this $22 million they're planning on getting the money for through a levy, as well as a dues increase. And my understanding, and I haven't read it specifically, but my understanding also a bank loan. Okay? In order to finance in order to finance the equity, I wish they would actually finance the equity works. Absolutely not. They're going to finance the fairness works. So we need to go beyond fairness. We need to think big, and we need to turn the tables on the powers that be in this country when it comes to the big issues. We need to continue to fight those defensive battles, but we need to go on the offensive and start to fight some offensive battles where we can galvanize everybody and win. And we can win. And I can give you a couple of examples where actually we were able to build a movement, but we killed it halfway through. How many of you were engaged in the CPP campaign, to double the CPP benefits campaign in 2010? That campaign, by the way, for those of you who were engaged in it, you know the story, I'm going to bore you a little bit. For those of you who were not engaged in it, I can tell you that was the best campaign the CLC did, and the worst campaign ever. Why? In 2010, of course, we mobilized members like we've never done before. There were town hall meetings that were held right across the country. CLC staff worked very hard to put these on, and locals and affiliates and members got engaged in those meetings in a way we haven't seen before. I remember being here in Toronto, I think it was March 27th, 2010, at the Hyatt Hotel. And it was full to capacity with people who came. They were angry at what's happening to our pensions and retirement security, and they wanted change. And they came in order to get engaged, and they came to see what they're going to do right after, because it was the beginning of the movement. At that meeting, of course, Jim Flaherty was invited to speak to the crowd. And to our shame, Jim Flaherty was let out of the back door without even taking a question or a comment from one rank and file member. Okay? That was one aspect. Anyway, there was a gentlemanly agreement that they wouldn't go after him. I think we could have at least questioned him in a civilized but forceful way as to what needs to be done with respect to retirement security for all. We didn't do that. We let him out the back door. But that's not the problem. That's just maybe a tactical issue. We can argue about it. The problem was that during that time, around June of that year, Flaherty and Harper promised the lobbyists from the Canadian Labour Congress that they're going to deliver at least a modest improvement to the CPP. And it was at that time where we folded our tent and went home and waited for Harper and company to deliver. Right? There was no more mobilization. After the Charlottetown meeting in June, we believed that was going to happen. Right? Fast forward to the fall, specifically to December of that particular year, 2010. Harper, of course, during that time was being lobbied by sectors that have a lot deeper pockets than we do. The corporate sector, the financial institutions, and the banks. And in December, they announced that the CLC and working people in this country, when it comes to the CPP, they're getting zilch. Whereas they're going to implement the PRPP, the pooled pension system that rewards financial sector and the banks. And we, as a CLC, hardly criticized the PRPP at that time, but furthermore, we did not have the capacity to put boots on the ground at that time to send the message to the government, this is unacceptable. And you don't think that the Harper government actually knew that that would be the case? Don't you think they knew that we had no capacity after June to mobilize anybody, to actually hold them accountable for the lack of delivery on this particular issue? But this is what happens, folks, when you do not trust in the capacity of working people to make change, and that's why you don't engage them, and instead you trust lobbyists. And this is what most of the CLC staff were at that particular time turned into, lobbyists. Okay? But that does not deliver either, because there are other people who can lobby a lot harder than we do. And as I said earlier, these are the corporations. So this example, okay, with respect to a campaign that we could have won, okay, is something that we need to resurrect right now and fight again. And I have some ideas at that level that we're putting very forcefully. And in terms of concrete ideas, I am planning town hall meetings right across the country, similar to the ones that were held in 2010. But these that will not be folded. After the town hall meetings, there will be the stepping stone to building a broad-based movement to engage the communities right across the country to fight for not only the doubling of the CPP, but the end of the two-tier system, the imposition or the addressing of the question of the revenues that we need to raise from a modest fight, a modest increase in 1%, similar to the Robin Hood tax. We have the wherewithal, we have the the allies to work with. All we need right now is the political will. And I can tell you that the current leadership at the CLC do not have the political will to fight a battle that is winnable as far as I'm concerned. So this is as far as the second plank that we're running on, is that we need to move beyond fairness, and we need to engage communities. We need to put forward a political vision for the labor movement, a political vision that our members can buy into, and the communities and the social movements that we work with can buy into. And that in that particular political vision, equity must be embedded. Equity in terms of an analysis, equity in terms of our campaigns, equity in terms of listening to our own members at the rank and file level with respect to the issues that they're facing and the campaigns that need to be taken on with respect to anti-oppression issues, as well as anti-racism, anti-discrimination at all levels, including campaigns starting with our own movement. And the third plank of our campaign that we're running, and without it we cannot do anything, and that is building a truly grassroots movement from the ground up. Folks, we've had 15 years of leadership at the CLC that has been top down, and that has not worked. We've seen the examples that Herman gave. We know the numbers when it comes to the unemployed. And right now we need a campaign that can engage not only the affiliates and labor councils and federations of labor, but can start with trusting the capacity of working people and the working class. And we need to actually start to use that term, working class. All we want to talk about now is the middle class. I still don't know what the fuck the middle class is, by the way. Okay? Needless to say, unless we start to believe in the capacity of working people to change their own reality, we will not be able to make a change at the Canadian Labour Congress, and certainly we cannot make change in society broadly. And this is what the campaign is all about. There are a lot more specifics. For those of you who may have visited the website and the Facebook, there are a lot more specifics that we've provided, including we put out the document, what I will do within the first 100 days of being elected as president of the CLC, including changing that title of being a CEO of the labor movement. Secondly, making sure, because you know what, I don't think that the president of the CLC needs 4 or 5 EAs. Okay, I think 1 or 2 maximum would do, because you have to understand that all the staff at the CLC can work collectively in order to carry forward these campaigns. He needs 1 or 2 EAs, and putting boots on the ground right across the country in communities where it matters. This is just a flavor, a little bit of the campaign that we're running. And I can tell you there are a lot more ideas and a lot more things that we can do. This is the agenda for change that we have. This is the new movement that we're building as part of this campaign. But I can tell you this, win or lose, it is about building a movement and making the connections and the networks, putting them all together to continue the fight after the convention. The convention itself is only a stop, folks. And even if we replace the position of president of the CLC, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I can tell you that if I win the presidency of the CLC, or when I win the presidency of the CLC, the movement needs to continue. It needs to continue to put pressure on me and other officers of the CLC to take the right or rather the left positions with respect to where we need to go. But certainly, if I don't win, there's even more impetus for us to continue the movement going forward, because I am a believer right now, after what I've seen over the past 6 weeks of our campaign, that there's an absolute necessity to start organizing in, but also around, if need be, the current structures that exist within the labor movement. Because the rot, sisters and brothers, is deep in the labor movement. And the lack of democracy is deep in the labor movement, and we need to challenge it at all levels of the organization. And my appeal is this particular vision or this particular campaign that we have will not be restricted only to the CLC. We need to carry it to all the affiliates. Okay? And of course, it's not going to be Hassan Husseini that will carry it to all affiliates. It's going to be rank and file members who will do so. Okay? Spring is late in coming this year, but it's finally here. And spring and change is coming to the CLC. I want to call it the labor spring. And that may be true, folks, because already the CLC convention that we're heading to is completely different from what they were planning. It's completely different from what they were hoping for. And we are proud of the campaign that we have so far, because finally they're coming out with platforms and videos and policies to try to win the support of delegates and beyond. And this is certainly proud of this accomplishment. So thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. Thank you for the opportunity. And for those of you who are going to be at the convention, we need all your help, all your support to make sure that change actually happens at the CLC. And remember, it's a movement that's going forward. The CLC is one stop. We still need your energy, your talent, and everything you can offer to build that movement going forward past the CLC. Thank you.